Hello, everyone. Thank you for listening to Movies with Love. Feels weird saying that out loud. But anyway, this is my recording for Dexter Season 8. I believe the topic is psychopathy or psychopathy. I don't know. I don't even know if that's a word. But I am going to get through this one pretty fast. I didn't have that many notes for Season 8, actually, which is good. Season 8. It was kind of rough to get through it. I enjoyed the beginning, and then season just got kind of dull as I watched it. One second. Okay, so I am going to try and get through this pretty quickly while I have time. So I'm recording season 8 before I'm recording season 6 or 7. So I actually just did season 5. And hopefully I don't miss anything in season 7, because usually I miss something, and the next season I'm like, oh, I'll go back, but who knows? I'll figure it out. So season 8, Psychopathy, and so I did do a recording about how Dexter went through the different the 9 layers of hell. This season was a little tricky because the 8th punishment was kind of all over the place, and I didn't want to try and force the whole situation with the season 8 characters. So if I have to think too hard or try and figure things out, I don't want to do that, because I don't want, personal opinions to get in the way of what I'm trying to say about the show. So the fact that I don't entirely know about Saxon, I don't want to squint and be like, well, maybe it's the, I don't want to do that, because I hate that when people, go on YouTube and stuff and they try and give facts about their favorite show or movies or whatever, and they it's just their personal opinion of what they think, and they didn't do their research on what the writer or the creator or director said about this scene or this character, and there's people giving off like stuff like it's facts, and it personally bothers me. Anyway, so yeah, so this season is about being a psychopath. So by the end of this season, or I should just start at the beginning of it, call it done. Alright, so in the first episode, Dexter is trying to find his humanity. So, wait. Season 7. The Guerda, yes. So in season 7, Dexter's humanity, which is represented by the character Deb. Deb, she committed a murder, and that kind of messed up the Dexter character, because Deb represents or symbolizes Dexter's humanity. So now that Dexter's humanity got a taste of blood and committed a murder, in such a way, now Dexter completely lost his humanity. He doesn't know what to do. But the weird thing about this is that LaGuardia's character represents Dexter's sense of authority. So the fact that Dexter's humanity actually killed his authority, or no, I'm sorry, his humanity kills his sense of authority, well, that means Dexter's kind of left without a sense of, like enforcement within himself. So now we see that as Dexter starts to act out throughout the season, the beginning of the season, and he's so angry and he's so desperate, he's trying to find Deb. He has no structure, he has no boundaries, simply because he does not have his sense of authoritative structure anymore, which is represented by LaGuardia. Not only that, his humanity has been damaged, shown in Deb. So, in the first scene when they're at the funeral, you see the characters having a discussion with each other, and this shows Dexter's internal feelings of what he's going through, trying to process his feelings and process his emotions. So all the characters talking in that scene are actually verbally or expressing what Dexter's actually going through inside. And with everything that happened, Dexter's sense of righteousness is trying to figure out, you know, the situation. He's just trying to figure it all out. He's trying to make sense of it. And Dexter's righteousness is represented by Angel Batista's character. Deb tries to reconnect with her sense of normalcy, of having a normal life. And season 3, normalcy was kind of I can't think of the word right now. I'm sorry. It was represented in the character of Anton. So Anton was really a character of normal life, normalcy, things like that. Just the opportunity to have a normal life away from trauma, away from the things that held them back in their past, their PTSD. A reason why I bring up that is because although Deb did not find Anton, or did not re-explore that, she did find another character whose last name is the same last name as Anton, which is Briggs. And Briggs's character is very similar to Anton and what it was about and the issues that Deb had with him, the whole drug situation. Just, there was a correlation there with Anton Briggs and this character named Briggs that psychologically represented, Dexter's humanity, or Deb trying to, have a sense of normalcy in life. This was desperation of trying to get back to it. Yes, I already explained Dexter's impulsive because he has no structure or authority. And I also wrote for the last note for episode 1, Dexter is Dexter is a subjective force of darkness, lost without humanity to guide. Yes, without Dexter's human compass, without that human side of him there, Dexter is a pretty dark, destructive force. And we see that now that Dexter, at a more raw state of mind, is pretty destructive and dark. Episode 2. Let's see what I wrote for episode 2. It's kind of hard reading some of these. Alright, so Dexter could not connect to Deb, and Dexter's inability to connect with Deb left him lost, because now that he's stuck in his darkness, he doesn't know what to do. He doesn't have life anymore. He doesn't have a compass, he doesn't have a guide, he doesn't have authority, he has nothing. So now that he is lost, he is forced to sit within the rawness of who he was, which manifests as his mythology. Physically, that becomes the character of Evelyn, of Vogel. And Vogel is basically like the therapy voice in his head. So now Dexter's basically just lost everything and lost his humanity. So now he is now he manifests as Vogel and manifests as his own mythology, as I just said. So something that Vogel did say in this episode was most successful people are psychopaths. And unfortunately, when you are in a position of leadership, you sometimes have to make very hard decisions, very difficult decisions. And sometimes, especially as a businessman, the decisions that you make, you realize that, once you get into certain businesses and things like that, you become a part of a bigger structure. A structure that's too big for you to really control. And, sometimes if you are a certain way, then you can't really, you're limited to how far you can go with the structure. It's very sad, but what I mean is sometimes you have to know when you have to put certain emotions, thoughts, or feelings behind you. When you're in a sense of leadership or powers, sometimes you gotta make sacrifices or hard choices, and it will tear your heart apart, if you don't know what you're doing. So a lot of people who are psychopaths, they understand what needs to be done, they understand the problem, and they know exactly how to get there, and they know exactly how it's going to affect other people around them. Having that knowledge allows them to make choices that accommodate for the mistakes that are going to manifest as a result of pursuing, trying to be a businessman or pursuing a situation that overall affects everyone that is involved with it or a witness to it. So, yeah. Anyway, so she also, psychopaths are gifts. I don't want to make this confusing with like sociopath or narcissism, and that's not what I want to do. I mean, psychopaths are pretty bad. They're pretty bad people, but at the end of the day, they are the ones that are crazy enough to take on the mantle of leadership and kind of make everyone else suffer for the sake of them getting what they want. And it's just the fact that they know how to manipulate so well that they can create structures that ultimately benefit them and hurt other people. And the psychopaths will be like, hey, I'm helping you, while at the same time destroying you. There are certain things in human evolution that cannot be done or cannot be created unless psychopaths were around. And just to give like an example, probably a bad example, just to give an example, how do we know so much about medicines and about surgery and about cutting through bodies and about chemicals and things like that? We would have had to actually find people and experiment on them, both dead and alive, as well as animals, to have found half of the medicines that we did, to find half of the medical stuff that we did. Like for someone to say, okay, you were sick, this part of your body is infected with something, so we got to get something to like cut this body part off so the infection doesn't grow in your body. Well, it takes someone to have to go and create an actual saw or instrument or something that can cut through a human bone. So as that person is thinking about that invention, they're thinking, oh yeah, this will saw right through a person's limb. This will saw right through a person's blood vessels and their veins and their bones. It's like someone, even if the thought is still pure, someone still had to go through that process of creating that thing. And so that's like an example of why psychopaths are kind of like gifts to the world, because without these messed up people or messed up structures, we wouldn't push ourselves, or I wouldn't know as much as we do for our species when it comes to medicines or technology and things like that, unfortunately. But so yeah, some of it is good, but dealing with the people themselves, that's bad. All right. Yeah, I guess don't expect this conversation to be a light one. If you take what I say seriously. The last note I wrote for episode 2, Dexter. I actually do not know. Okay, so I think this was one of those parallel scenes. Whenever Dexter goes through something internally, whatever emotion is affected is expressed by the other main characters in the story. that represent that part of him. So I believe this note was a parallel of as Dexter's going through therapy with Vogel, Quinn is being asked to do something with his life from Angel, which, again, Angel represents Dexter's righteousness. And I forgot what Quinn represented. I think Quinn was like the physical. I think Quinn and Dexter basically go through the same thing, but Quinn is more of like a literal version of what he goes, something like that. But anyway, so as Dexter's going through therapy, Angel is telling Quinn, "Hey, do something with your life." So now Dexter's starting to feel like, okay, maybe it's time for me to get out of where I'm at and start doing something. And then you hear Dexter's sense of righteousness telling Quinn, "Hey, go do something." Episode 3. What's eating away? I think for that note, no, I remember I had a whole thing about when I wrote that, and I wish I had the DVD in right now. But I know when something's eating away at you, it's going to cause you to be very upset, to be very angry, to do things that are really out of your character, but are in the character or the nature of the thing that broke you, or you're going to express the characteristics of the nature of how you've been damaged. Things like whenever we go through something, a lot of times we do something, we have a habit or something, and we think that we have that habit because we're trying to feel better, when really the habit that we're craving or engaging into is actually just the expression of what pain we're already feeling inside. And when that pain inside that we feel starts to try and express itself, it actually expresses itself by craving or pursuing the very thing that damaged it in the first place. Simply because it's not so much of, people trying to cope with it or feel better. It's more of the mind itself or the body itself trying to express what it is feeling inside. And self expression is both a good thing and a bad thing. It doesn't self expression isn't a I can't think of the word. It starts with a D. It's like a discriminate. It's not discriminate. It doesn't discriminate. Self expression does not discriminate. So when it comes to self expression, if you feel good inside, it will come out. If you feel bad inside, it will come out. So when we go through such traumatizing things, then we sometimes engage in these behaviors that are so destructive because our minds and bodies are telling us how we are damaged, and then we crave through the expression of our body telling us what's wrong, which is a weird paradox because we think that we're engaging in these things to feel better when really it's not. All right, so don't let things eat away at you because they will make you do bad things, weird things. Forgive me if that is not what I meant when I wrote that note. Um, so yeah. Um, yeah, so just be honest with yourself and whatever your mind and your body's trying to tell you. Oops. All right. So sorry if there's a huge difference in audio. I'm actually recording the rest of this 2 days later. Like 11 seconds just passed for you guys, but for me, it's been 2 days. And I'm finally in a position where I can actually talk better than how I did before. And yeah, so I'm going to get through this quickly, as I said. I was on episode 3. So yeah, episode 4. So I'm starting episode 4. This episode was called Scar Tissue, and this starts off when Let's see. My first note is so in this scene, Deb and Vogel were talking, and Deb was like, "Hey, talking about this isn't going to change anything or isn't going to help." And Vogel said, "Well, neither is suppressing it. When you are dealing with something heavy or heavy trauma or a heavy burden, a heavy anchor, something that you're going through, um, I don't know, some kind of sin or whatever. I don't, that word comes to mind, sin. Whenever you're dealing with something that's so heavy on you or you have a problem, um, talking about it can actually help out. It can actually help diminish the energy that's inside of you. This actually, there's an effect when you talk to people. There is a diminishing of energy, whether that is good or bad, because at times, if you have an ambition and you have a strong ambition, you keep, you have that energy and you talk about it to people, it sometimes gives your brain a false sense of accomplishment. And as you're talking about a big idea that you have, you can sometimes feel unmotivated to want to actually physically do it anymore for the simple fact that you talked about it. The same thing can happen when you are dealing with a heavy trauma, which is if you have something heavy in you and you talk about it, it actually diminishes the energy that is, building up around that category or that specific situation or how it is making you feel. So talking about it does help. But for those who don't think that talking does help at all, then, suppressing it isn't going to help either. You can't just keep a beast locked up. It's gonna get angry and it's gonna lash out, and these symptoms are gonna whatever these symptoms are gonna come out in so many various ways in so many different parts of your life, and it's just not gonna be pretty. If you don't take control of the monsters that are inside of you or whatever, then they're going to end up taking control of you in some kind of way. That's just how nature works. There's always going to be the dominant and the submissive. There's always going to be that leader. There's always going to be that follower. And if you choose to just suppress how you feel, if you just suppress your thoughts, what you're going through, if you just try to bury it, then at that point, that darkness just has access to the deeper, more intimate parts of who you are. And once it has access to those deeper, intimate parts of who you are, it starts to set in there and it starts to, you know, flow through the cracks because as we start to have intimate relationships with life, intimate relationships as in how we produce something, how we talk to people, how we communicate, how we bond with individuals. That's what intimacy is. When we take our essence and we start to project it or share it within another thing that is outside of us or with us, so that is intimacy. So when you have a lot of dark, guilt or a lot of dark energy or something that is inside of you and you try to bury it, you bury it into the deepest part of your soul. And that deeper part of your soul is where intimacy comes from. So when you suppress this stuff, it gets deep in there. And then as you go through life and you start having intimate expressions or bonds with people or situations or moments, what will happen is that darkness that you had in there will actually seep through the cracks and it will slowly start to, or not even slowly, it'll start to express itself uncontrollably through everything external that you do. In your work, in your projects, in your communications, uh, love making, relationship bonds, all of it, relationships, bonds, all of it. So suppressing things are not going to help. And so if you think that talking isn't going to help, don't think that suppressing is going to help either. Um, so it is good to, play out these situations, get them out of your head, get them through your head. Sometimes you just gotta play out a situation, relive that situation, just live it out, and just let it go, let it in, let it out, let it go. um there is a connecting note here that Dexter, as Dexter has never left these walls, but Deb has the ability to leave. Some traumas, some traumas or situations get so deep into us that it just becomes a part of us, of who we are, our DNA, whatever. But at other times, I had to fix my mic. Sometimes they get so deep that they're a part of who we are, but other times these uh, dark things that are burdens that we take on, they're not. Sometimes they're not as deep, but um, what they are is we hold on to them. And when we hold on to them, we use a specific feeling or a thought or a certain mindset or expectation, whatever. Sometimes we're using emotion, a feeling, a thought, a belief, something along those lines to actually hold in this situation. And when we do that, then the situation actually starts to, make us miserable, make us angry, make us feel guilty, make us feel out of control. It makes us feel very unpleasant. And sometimes it's not even the fact that it's who we are, it's the fact that we're using emotions to hold on to a situation. And by doing that, it's making us miserable. And then we're lashing out. And then we go through these habits, or we drink a lot, or we constantly try to numb or suppress. And really, we shouldn't be, using these certain emotions to mask these things. I've also known people to have gone through grief who've done it too, who, when they go through, grief or something, they'll find an emotion like anger or something, sadness, something. And what they'll do is they'll get this emotion and they will heavily identify themselves with that emotion, or they'll use that emotion to keep them connected to someone that they've lost or something that they lost or feel separated from. And when they don't know how else to connect, they just use an emotion or a feeling, and they hold on to that feeling because they feel like if they don't hold on to that feeling, they're portraying themselves, they're portraying their loved one, they're portraying a situation, they're portraying a moment, they're portraying somebody or something, and they don't want to portray them. So they hold on to this emotion to just try and keep them alive in some way, shape, or form. Um, the difference, as what Vogel was saying, is Dexter is trapped in these walls where Deb isn't. She can choose to walk out. And the situation that I just said, something like Dexter. Dexter is stuck in the shipping container. A part of him is stuck in that shipping container. And as long as that part of him is still there in that part of history, then it influences the rest of, his design and who he is. Whereas with Deb, she was more of like created in a sense. So because it happened to her so late, she has the ability to cope with it differently, which is with the emotions that I just talked about. And she chooses to leave those emotions, to walk away from those emotions, then she can move on better, in a better way. um Humanity understanding darkness can heal darkness, as a lot of times we'll feel like, oh, we did something wrong, we did something bad, and then we punish ourselves. Like if we're children, we're kids, we're toddlers, and we did something wrong, and then after we did something bad, our parents came or someone came and they punished us for it. Well, now sometimes what we'll do is we'll hold on to those patterns, we'll recreate those patterns. And when we feel like we've done something bad, then we feel in our mind, oh, I did something bad, time to be punished for it. And when there isn't anyone to punish us, then we feel like something is not right in the world, and then we will choose to punish ourselves, or we'll hold on to guilt, or we'll do something that just makes us feel like we deserve this kind of a punishment or whatever. The thing is, once you learn how humanity works. Once you bring humanity to a dark situation, to a bad situation, then you understand that the situation can be healed. That is a form of empathy. That is a empathic healing process, which is once something is understood, um, there's a powerful connection, and there is a healthy way to move on, to move forward, and to cure, what is bad, or what is wrong, or what doesn't feel right. You know what I mean? So sometimes we'll do something and we'll say, why did I do that? And then we completely tear ourselves apart internally because we did something and we didn't understand why we did it. And then we lose pieces of ourselves, and we fall down these bad habits, or these patterns, and we lose our sense of identity. We lose trust in ourselves. We lose our ability to have a healthy relationship with life itself, or in the future itself, of seeing our future. And it'll be a very small, simple thing that happened. It doesn't even have to be anything big. It's something small. And you probably made a choice, a decision. You don't know why you did it, and it resulted in something that was so big or devastating that it completely changed the course of your future or someone else's future. You probably lost friends, you probably lost a job or something because you made one choice that was out of character for you. And then because that happened, because you lost your job, you couldn't afford your bills or something, and then you ended up getting behind in your rent. You somehow lost your job, and you couldn't get back on your feet, and the course of your entire future went left field, all because you made a tiny decision. Um, yeah, I'm getting through this really quick, aren't I? I'm still on my third note. Anyway, sometimes what you have to understand is that when you bring humanity to a situation like that, then you understand that when you made that choice in that moment, you were just being human. You were just being you. You were just doing what was in your nature. You were just put in an impossible situation where you had to make an impossible choice, and you made the decision that you felt and you knew what was best, that was in your nature. And sometimes when you're in these impossible situations, the outcome sometimes isn't a good outcome. Sometimes there's a bad outcome, and there's the best outcome that there could have been. Sometimes the choice that you made is the best that could have been, even if it wasn't a good one. It's not good to hold on to any kind of guilt, or I should have done this differently. I could have done that differently. There had to have been something. There had to be something that was different. No, just you can't let yourself be haunted by all of that. You have to understand that you were in a situation, and it was a rough situation. It was impossible, and you had to make the best choice that you possibly could. Just take it easy and have empathy with yourself. You know what I mean? To give an example I'll give an example of what happened to me. This happened in, I believe, 2016 or 17. I'm actually going to share this story because of how bad this was. I was actually working at it was some kind of center, donation center. And life was good, life was fine, life was all right. But there was this dude, and the dude would always come back, and we would always hook him up with discounts to do us that were in the back. So we would hook him up with discounts and everything. I was new. I was a new guy, and everyone else was doing it. And they were just like, hey, we give this dude discounts. It's cool. So I was giving him discounts and everything. And at random times, when we would give him discounts, at random times, he would actually give us, he would give us snacks. Sometimes he would give us, a couple of food here and there. There were times when he would actually give us money. There was times when I was actually struggling, and he knew that I was struggling at times. Yeah, and anyway, so sometimes he would give us money. He would tip us money. He would tip us food. he would just tip us in different ways, discount cards, whatever. And so it was like, okay, well, whatever. So at the time, I wasn't thinking about it because I just didn't think about it. I was like, I'm gonna give this dude a discount anyway. So if he decides to randomly at times, toss us a few dollars, I'm like, well, it's not like the discounts are gonna stop. Like it's like I'm not making a financial deal with him. It's not set in. So anyway, so I didn't think about it. So I just whatever. Sometimes he could tip us money. Sometimes he tip us snacks and cart and stuff. So then one day, um, he came in the back, and I was working by myself, and he pointed out some stuff that he wanted, and I was like, well, not allowed to do that, but I guess if you're gonna buy this stuff that's not on the floor yet, and you want it, and I'm not gonna clutter up the floor, so whatever. He came in the back and he pointed it, and I was like, whatever. So anyway, so I got some price tags, slapped it on, and this dude went to the back, pointed at the stuff, and then left, and then went around the store, drove his truck back there, and gave me an old receipt, and then came to pick everything up, and me didn't properly. I kind of glanced at it, but I had a feeling that it was kind of fake because I think we have different colored tickets. I didn't really look at it, and I had a line. I was by myself, and I was like, wait a minute, is this an old ticket? Why isn't there multiple colors? But then I had a line, and I was like, I think he's stealing this stuff. But then I was like, I don't know. And I was just in a position, and I was just like, I don't know how to handle this. And before my brain could really process the entire situation, I was like, I'm gonna put this. I'm just gonna whatever. I'm gonna just figure this out another time. So I loaded up, helped him load up his truck, and I just let him go. And I was just like, okay, whatever. I'm just gonna ignore the situation, and I shouldn't have done that because after he left and I got through with the line, and I looked at the ticket, and the ticket was an old receipt that I had. Um, so then I was like, oh, well, that's not good, but it was too late at that point. So turns out when he pointed at his stuff and he left the store, the cashier saw him leave, and the cashier just happened to go on break at that exact moment. So he went to the back and went to take his cigarette break, and then he saw the dude in his truck, and then he saw me load up the truck. So when the cashier saw that, he was like, "What?" So he told corporate, and they looked at the cameras, and then they saw it, and then he was like, "Ah, I got him." And then corporate was like, "Hey, you're helping people steal stuff." So then I ended up losing my job there. When I lost my job there, I felt taken advantage of because, I was nice enough to give this dude, a discount, but then the fact that he gave me a fake ticket meant that he was probably stealing stuff the entire time. And the fact that I didn't always check his receipts meant that he was probably stealing a lot. Um, I felt guilty about that. I felt taken advantage of because I thought I was doing something nice to somebody, with somebody, for somebody, and I wasn't. I felt like everyone was going to look at me like I was a thief now. A lot of people looked at me like I was a good person, and now it was like I had a reputation of being a thief, of stealing stuff, of taking bribes or taking money and helping people steal. And now everyone who saw anything good in me, anyone who saw anything good in or in humanity, if their faith in humanity was restored because, I was a good person, people were like, "Oh, good people do exist." And now that I had this reputation of being a thief, it was like I completely broke people's trust in there ever being good people in the world. So that affected me deeply. I couldn't trust myself anymore. I didn't know how to trust anybody in the world. And what I did was I locked myself in some kind of weird mental prison. I couldn't sleep properly. Every time I woke up, I had no motivation to wake up. I just woke up and I was like, I don't want to be up. For my entire life, I would go to sleep. I would wake up, and the second that I woke up, I was wide awake every single day of my life. But then when that happened, I would go to sleep and I would open my eyes and I would say, I don't want to be here. I went to sleep and I didn't want to wake back up. I would have to physically drag myself out of bed. I was numb. I was constantly scared. I was constantly worried. I kept telling myself every single day I would never be taken advantage of again. I will never let anyone take advantage of me. I will never I don't know if I can trust myself. I don't know if I can trust my judgment. I'm a terrible person. It was awful. Just it doesn't matter what the situation was. It was the fact of how it affected me, how it affected my mind and my emotional state. How I felt like I damaged the souls of so many other people and destroyed their faith in their in kindness or goodness in the world, and I was a contributor of that. I couldn't have healthy relationships anymore. I couldn't all the people that I cared about and loved and worked with, I felt ashamed to be around them. I lost a couple of my gifts. I lost a lot of pieces of who I was, of how I was able to perceive life. Ever since that moment happened, my life fell apart. I was engaged. I lost my fiance. I couldn't be in a relationship with her. I told her what happened, and she was like, that's something small. You shouldn't be traumatized over that. And that led into a whole nother story that I can't get into. That I can't get into. But I lost her. We separated. I couldn't connect, and I was more present in my body, more locked into my body. Every choice that I made for my life and my future was consciously a choice that I made, but it was never a choice that was made from my heart. The life couldn't guide me in the direction that it needed to guide me in because of how locked in and obsessed I was with taking control of my life and every single aspect of it. By doing that, I didn't realize that I didn't have what I need. My life could only evolve as much as my life could only evolve as much as I was limited. My limitations were the only thing that my life could evolve into because I chose to take that much control. And because of that, my life fell apart because I was unable to grow and life was unable to use me the way it needed to. So as that happened, that my entire life was ruined, my entire life was destroyed, and life couldn't give me new opportunities or new situations. So therefore, I lost success. Miracles couldn't happen in my life. Miracles didn't happen. Blessings didn't happen. Opportunities rarely happened. None of it happened. You know what I mean? And it was for the simple fact that when you're a child, the future is endless. The world is vast. It's endless, and there's no limits to what life can bring you or what can happen with you in life. And that innocence, that we had as children, is what I lost that day. And even to this day, right now, I still struggle. and that ultimately losing that part of me, of my soul, is ultimately what destroyed my future. And it was very hard to talk about this with anybody because of how small this seemed compared to other people who have done horrible things like murder, or have done things that are so complex that you can't even put one word into it. Anyway, so I'm deeply sharing that because this is in reference to Dexter. Hopefully, by hearing that story, you guys understand. You guys will find something inside of yourselves and say, "Hey, maybe this was a small situation that affected me in such a big way." But just know that it was. Just know that you did the best that you could. That you were in an impossible situation. You did what was natural to you. We always do things that are natural to us every single day. And 90% of the time, 99% of the time, nothing goes wrong. But it just, sometimes that one thing, that 1%, something does go wrong. We're just being ourselves. And we can't let that take us off the course. And, we can't hold on to those bad feelings. We just gotta learn to forgive ourselves, learn to forgive yourself, learn to honor and listen to how badly you were actually hurt, no matter how minor or small the situation was. You have to learn how to, quote, solve that case if you are going to move on. You have to deal with it. You have to deal with the feelings. You have to deal with those emotions and that memory. Holding on to that memory, you have to learn how to reprogram your memories and to just look at them with different eyes, different understanding. And once you do that, then the memory actually starts to affect you differently in how you feel, and the choices you make, how you feel about yourself, things like that. Now, actually, through that entire whatever I just said, I actually went through a couple of different notes. But yeah, so hopefully this story will help you guys, will help someone. So yeah, just learn to bring some humanity to your situation. Just try to understand why you did what you did, and just don't let it. Just don't be afraid of it. Don't be don't be scared. Don't be scared because you hurt someone. Or you, I'm sorry. Don't be scared because you made a decision that maybe resulted in something that wasn't favorable, I guess. But you had to do it. Otherwise, something worse would have happened. Yeah, and yeah, and just also last thing I'll say about this topic is to understand that sometimes in society, the things that we do goes sometimes society's ideals go against human nature, goes against our nature. And sometimes we'll make a choice, we'll make a decision, we'll make a choice, and we won't know why we made it. And we'll guilt trip ourselves when really it was just the fact that society said that something was wrong. But for you, it was in your personal nature to do this thing because it was favorable, because it's who you are. But according to society, society looks down upon that action or that choice that you did, or what you did. And it's like, that's something you can't hold on to. Is it something's in your nature? Know when it's right for you versus if society looks down upon it, or if the world looks down upon it. but it's beneficial for you, or not in a malicious way. But if it's a good choice for you, like society will say, you have to work your 9 to 5 job. But if your human nature says, I don't want a 9 to 5 job, I want to pursue my dream, well, go pursue your dream. And, if you fail, don't be like, that was stupid what I did, or feel guilty about it, or, be like, I was wrong for what I did. This, no, no. You just, if society's always going to say 9 to 5 job, but if it's not in your nature, then go do what's in your nature. Don't feel bad about it. Don't feel guilty. Yeah, go for it. This was supposed to be my shortest upload. That's not working out. um, let's see what my next. Yeah. Let's see what my next note is. Um, so for this note, I wrote Deb is dealing with generational trauma. Um, but I wish I remember exactly what scene that was. I think that was the ending scene when Deb, yes, that was when Deb looked at the monitors and she saw Harry's video. So when Deb looks at Harry's video, and it was the last one that he did with Vogel, and she said, "Oh my gosh, this was Dad's last video." And she asked Dexter, "Did Dad do so and so?" And Dexter was like, "Yeah, he found out that I was a monster, and he went off and did what he did to himself and everything." In that moment, Deb is actually dealing with generational trauma, repeating that cycle of her father, which was falling in love with Dexter, or loving Dexter, and finding out what kind of a monster he was. And then he couldn't handle it and did what he did to himself because of it. Deb actually took on that generational trauma of finding out who Dexter was and taking it very, very hard. And in the process of doing so, she embodied or became the same pain that Harry did. Only this time, now that she's repeating that cycle, she actually has to find a better way to deal with it, or a better way to cope with it. That's the thing about Dexter, about the show Dexter, is one of the biggest themes is about cycles and generational traumas and the repeating of cycles until different outcomes are made. So this is Deb dealing with her generational trauma and reliving what what got Harry killed off. Um. So yeah, that's what that was. Um. Sometimes situations or moments can be so overwhelming that it feels like death is the only way out. It's not. Just it's not. Don't listen to that. Don't. Don't let those things get loud. Don't. That's all I'm gonna say about that. When the pain is gone, what is left? And I remember having an old coworker, and there was a whole domino effect that happened. But I'm not gonna go into all that. But sometimes those rough emotions, those rough feelings, those bad feelings, those that anger, sometimes even that hate that we have for someone close to us, someone that we care about, someone that we love, our parents, or someone. Sometimes all of that pain is the closest thing to love that we will ever have with them, unfortunately. Sometimes people won't change. They'll just constantly make you miserable, constantly destroy pieces of you. And it's just, oh, I wish things can go back to the way that they were before. I wish things that, nah, it doesn't. Sometimes it doesn't work that way. It's just a lot of times when you have those bad, hurtful feelings towards someone, that's the closest thing to love that you're gonna get, that you'll have. Um, Sometimes, I think, it's like there's some people in my life, there's some people in people's lives, and it's like you just don't get along, but you just don't. And sometimes I feel grateful that I have this person or these people alive to hate. Just keep that in mind. Um, at least that's how I kind of got through it. When you really do hate somebody, when you really don't like anybody, when you're angry at them, have animosity or whatever, and you're constantly like, oh, I can't stand this person. I can't forgive them. I can't forgive my friend for what he did. I can't forgive my brother. I can't forgive my sister. I can't forgive my parents. I can't forgive my child. I can't forgive them for what they did. Well, when all of that anger, when all of that hate is not there, then what is actually left between the two of you? What is actually left between you guys when all the animosity is not there? And a lot of times people get that answer when someone dies, because when they're dead, it's like, when they're gone, it's like, well, can't be mad at them anymore. They're not here to be mad at, or they're not here to push away anymore. They're not here to guilt trip anymore. So, like, yeah, well, now that the guilt isn't there, now that the anger's not there, now that the feud isn't there, now that the hate is not there, then now what is left between you and them? What is left between you and your relationship with that person usually is revealed after they're gone. And one of the biggest regrets I know a lot of people have is when they're left with those raw feelings. These are feelings that could have been indulged when this person or these people were alive. But now that the one person is dead, now that they're not here anymore, um, now these feelings are just one sided. And it's like, well, I miss this person. I wish I could touch this person, smell them, do this and that. It's like giving people roses when they can't smell them anymore. So just keep that in mind. This scene, this feeling that I'm talking about right now came to me as I was watching Deb in the car with Dexter. And it was like, she was like, okay, well, now that there's, no hate left, what is left? And I feel like sometimes there can be people in abusive situations too that will be angry at their abusive partner and things like that. And then when they're scared, their fear or their anger or their Stockholm syndrome, whenever that stuff disappears, then they become numb to their partner. And it's just like, whoa, all the hate, all the bad feelings, all the rage that I felt for this person, it's no longer there. But then you're left with a completely different voice now. It's always been there, but there's always been masked by the fire, by that rage. Something to just bring to someone's attention. But anyway, so like I said, this is me talking about Dexter and what I got from the show, and a lot of the deeper things that were in the show that were said in like seconds but had so much weight to it. Episode 5. Yeah, I know, right? Episode, not even halfway done yet. I am. These notes are actually going to go by really fast. I'm probably going to finish this in like less than 10 minutes. Episode 5. Sometimes you have to have a complete breakdown to put the pieces back together. in different ways, if different shapes or forms. Um, it be like that sometimes. Sometimes when you're constantly trying to fight and fight and fight, it's like stop it. Sorry, hold on. Let me. In this particular situation, we sometimes will fight and we'll fight and we'll hold on to something. We'll go through a mental battle and we'll constantly just fight it and go through it, and we feel like we're losing, and life just becomes so revolved around it, and we just keep going and fighting, and sometimes a breakdown is necessary. A complete meltdown, a complete I'm done is necessary. Once you completely break down from a moment, for once you completely break down from a situation, then you have the opportunity to look at all your pieces that are around you and reinvent who you are, how you present yourself in life, and what you do from this moment on. You cannot do that when you are constantly trying to repair something that is falling apart. Sometimes you need to let the thing fall apart in order to rebuild it to be stronger or better than it was before. You are never going to be able to truthfully rebuild a relationship with anybody, or even with yourself, or even with God, or even with your own future, or even a situation, until sometimes you let the thing completely fall apart. Sometimes that is the best thing you can do for yourself. Sometimes that is the best thing you can do, the best option that you have. Um, the stronger your feelings for someone, the stronger your idea of them manifests. Yeah, someone can be a complete monster, but when you feel a certain way about somebody and you just don't want to acknowledge what they do, you're just like, no, this person is this person. And then you just kind of put that in your mind and you're like, yeah, this person is like this. And then you just stick to that. And that's all you see in that person. That's all you see. You just see your expectation of who you think they are. So every other decision that they make, every other thing that they do, you actually don't see it. Sorry, my dog is doing that circle thing. It goes before he lays down. Okay. He's like right on me. Anyway, so when the stronger your feelings are for someone, then the stronger you manifest that version of them, and then that becomes the only version that you're able to see in them. And eventually, something happens when you start to second guess and like, wait a minute, what? And then eventually, you may start to, notice different patterns. But well, for the most part, how we view people, how we see people, is what we will start to manifest from them. And you know, um, if you're like a person who is like distrusting and trusting, and you're just like, I think people are always backstabbers. No one ever cares about me, or they just want to betray me or use me for my money. And what happens is when you meet people and you're bonding with them and you're talking, then they may be like, yo, can I borrow a few dollars real quick? And your first thought is, they want money from me. That's what it is. They want to just use me for my money. It's like, no, it's not that. And every time they do something or they say something, you will carefully analyze their words. You will carefully analyze their reactions to moments and situations. And what you'll do is you'll hold on to it, and you'll completely look at the image of that person based on what you're expecting of them. And then you start to affirm in your mind over and over again, oh, now this person's a piece of garbage. Oh, this person's a liar. Oh, this person's two-faced. Oh, this person's not really ambitious. This person constantly makes up excuses for their life. And sometimes it's not even that. It's just the fact that everything that they say and do, you take all their actions and you're only able to see the pieces that affirm your thoughts of who they are, of who you think they are. And that's all you see in that person. Therefore, you create that version of them in your mind. The next note, so in this note of episode 5, I put Dexter's humanity tries to find his dark side. A sense of dark, man, darkness. This happens when Deb is trying to find Dexter now. And with Deb representing Dexter's humanity, this means that inside of Dexter, Dexter's human side is so disconnected from him, from his dark, that it's just so disconnected and they just don't know how to find each other again. From just, he doesn't know how to find his humanity anymore. His own humanity tried to kill him. Deb tried to kill him. His sense of humanity tried to get rid of him by saying maybe death is the answer to trying to get rid of this, and it is not. That was symbolic of Deb killing Dexter in so many different ways, but in the sense of Dexter's psyche and how each character represents his psyche, this was more of his humanity is trying to completely kill his darkness inside of him. But now that there is the breakdown that has happened, now that his humanity has broken down and understand itself better, and also understand that uh, anyway, so when his human side is trying to understand itself better, rebuild itself, it says, hey, I want to reconnect. um there has to be a balance between both sides. So now we see Deborah trying to reconnect with Dexter because it's Dexter's humanity that's actually trying to reconnect with the dark side of him. Um, yeah. Um, let's see this. So for this weird note, I wrote down search for connection. Um, oh, this was when Yates was searching for connection, and the only connection that Yates got, sorry, I gotta stop dropping my mic. The only connection that Yates got was from the terrible things that his mom put him through. So this was one of Vogel's test subjects. So who they thought was the brain surgeon. So this dude had a mom who treated him bad, and he felt like the only way he knew how to find connection anymore was to basically kind of recreate the situations or the feelings that he got with his mom, the horrible situations. And he did it in such an bad extreme way. Same as how Dexter tries to find that connection again. He does what he does. Um, a lot of times we will recreate the thing that broke us to try and find connection again. That is a symptom that a lot of us do. We all do. Will do. A lot of time, even if we feel if we feel misunderstood, or we feel that no one wanted to love us, no one tried to care about us, no one supported us, we felt like no one truly wanted to see us for who we are or love us. And what happens is we become the the embodiment of that person, and we go out and we find people, and we're just like, hey, I understand you're broken, I want to be here to help fix you. I understand that you're broken, I want to be here to love you. All your insecurities that you have, I want to let you know that it's okay. I want to be here to be supportive of this person, to be loving of that person, to show people it's okay to be who they are. That's because a lot of times individual people lose that, or didn't grow up with that, or it was taken from them, or something like that. And what they'll do, let me make sure I'm recording. Still recording, cool. And what they'll do is they will repetitively recreate um, what it is they feel that they've lost and direct it toward other people. That can be healthy because it can create great leaders. It can create people who want to create programs or activities or things for people to help them out who may feel this way. If someone never went through something so horrible, then they wouldn't create something that would help other people for the future. And things like that. But it can also be bad because, like with me, diving into my psychology, being younger, with my parents, and everything, I was always kind of told or shown, women were these creatures that were just like no one loved them, no one cared about them. They were always mistreated. They were always treated badly. No one cared about them. They had all these insecurities, and it was because of how people judged them and everything, and how people treated them. And um, women were always mistreated and bullied and yelled at, and a lot of times physically abused and all this stuff. And the thing is, being raised in that, I started looking at women and I was like, I want to let women know that it's okay, that they can feel supported, they can feel loved. I'll be there to be gentle with them, to be nice with them, to be supportive, to love them. If they have some insecurity, I want them to know it's okay. If they need to cry, I want to be there for them. I don't want them to feel alone. I don't want them to feel broken, things like that. Um, the reason why I say that was wrong, because as I actually got older, um, different scenarios happened, different bad scenarios, different unsatisfying scenarios happened with that. But simply because that was the only way that I could view women when it came into certain areas, and I was unable to see the certain strengths that women had and really help them emphasize their strengths. I was so focused on how broken women were and how I can be there to help them that I didn't look at their biggest strengths and help them in that area. But that was because of how I was raised, because of what I saw, what I was exposed to, and how my mother was treated. So I use myself as an example, digging into my psyche, because that is how love was affected for me. And that wasn't always a healthy thing, because now it's like feeding a monster at that point, that hurts somebody, and saying, I'll make you feel better, I'll make you feel better. It's like, why? Because you've gone through so many bad things. I got you. Don't worry about it. So anyway, so yeah, that's what Yates tried to do, refine connection. And same with me. I've had a lot of lack of love and support and all that, so I tried to recreate that in a partner and say, hey, I want to be there for you the way I wasn't taken care of. And I tried to be the best, nicest person that I could be. And that caused in modern day people found this new word called simp. And then I ended up, I guess, being labeled that. Some people called me that, and it was like, oh, I guess that's a new thing now. I guess I got a whole new identity. Anyway, um, last note I wrote for episode 5. Yeah, Yates, the character, represents Dexter's broken inner child trying to connect with his mother. Episode 6, Zach, Dexter letting Zach go. Zach represented this idea of Dexter passing on his legacy or passing on the code, I guess, to a younger person, but just a younger Dexter, I guess. But yeah, Zach Dexter wanted to know if he could be a spiritual father and pass down who he was. Episode 7, Cassie's death equals Dexter. Cassie's death. Cassie was a character that represented Dexter living a normal life. So Cassie dying actually represents Dexter's psychoticness, his psychoticness, psychopathy, psychopathy. Um, Casey's death, which was the cute neighbor next door that Jamie tried to hook up with Dexter, get together. Her death represented Dexter's psychoness, killing his chance at a normal life and destroying his ability to not focus or revolve around the darkness that plagued his life. And at the end, someone just walked in, so I'm gonna get through this pretty quick. Episode 8, Deb forgiving Hannah. Okay, so Deb forgiving Hannah transfers. Okay, so Deb forgave Hannah, but what happened is that forgiveness actually transfers into Elway. And I forgot, I have my notes somewhere, but I forgot what Elway represented. Elway represented, I think, the leftover bits and pieces of Dexter's humanity, unresolved, I guess, or not. Elway basically was just that piece of Dexter's humanity saying, "Hey, that's not okay." It's like he was like a piece of justice, a piece of Deb trying to say, "Oh, it's okay," and Dexter still having that piece of his humanity that says, "Hey, it's not okay. You and Hannah are not okay. This is not right." And Elway represented in Dexter's mind that piece of his humanity that was more of an echo, that was kind of connected to his humanity, that was more like, no, this is not okay. So Elway took on the rage that Deb had for Hannah. So when Deb forgave Hannah and says it's okay for us to be together, that rage, that part that's trying to tell Dexter you and Hannah don't belong together, it's still there, but it manifested or transferred in Elway as Deb forgave Hannah. That was more of a psychological thing. Dexter accepts his dark family, Zach being his son, Deb his sister, Hannah his wife, Vogel his mom. Um, Zach equals passing down the code, and Zach equals or represents a partnership with son, with killing with the son. Which once you get into New Blood, you understand that by the relationship happening with Zach actually dying, Zach actually represented the idea of Dexter passing down the code or being a partner with Harrison. So Zach was more of that symbolism of, let's do a time skip ahead and say, if Dexter did have a son and he did pass the code, how was it actually going to happen? How is it going to end? How would it turn out? And killing off Zach killed off that scenario that him and Harrison could be partners. So once you get into Dexter New Blood, you get into the ending when you get into the ending when Dexter and Harrison have their face off and everything, and that simply was couldn't happen because Dexter's partnership with his son was killed off with the Zach character in this season. And that's what psychologically that represented for Zach's character being killed off. Vocal equaled therapy and a chance to work through his deep psychological trauma. That's what Vogel represented. Now we go ahead to episode 11. And in episode 11, that okay. Sorry, just got a phone call just to get yelled at. As I was doing my recording, I kept getting phone call after phone call, and I was like, oh my gosh, why am I getting the same phone call from this one person? Got called to get yelled at. Okay. At least it happened toward the end of this. The last three notes that I have. Saxon actually represents the inner devil that is inside of Dexter. Not a demon, not a darkness, but the actual devil. And when Saxon is in Dexter's apartment, that was basically like his heart. It's actually Dexter's heart. Home is where the heart is. And that was Dexter's apartment is where his heart is. So Cassie was very strongly connected to his heart, the lady next door. And when she was killed in his apartment, or next to his apartment or his apartment, whatever, next to his apartment, I believe that was again the inner devil or the psycho side of Dexter. Trying to destroy Dexter's life and his ability to have a normal life, and it was basically the devil saying, "Hey, no, you're not going anywhere. I want you." So in Dexter's apartment in this season, you see Miguel's wife come back. Victoria, can't remember her name right now. But when you see Miguel's wife come back, I thought it was very random that I'm going to actually Google her name right now. Valerie Cruz. So when Valerie Cruz came back, Miguel's wife, I thought it was kind of random. It may seem random that, why did Miguel's wife come back as the realtor or whatever? Well, Miguel's wife actually, so Valerie Cruz's character represents for Dexter the ability to move one's heart from one bad situation and completely move on and have a fresh start. And Valerie Cruz's character symbolically represents that in Dexter's mind. That's what she was created for in his mind. So Valerie Cruz was actually there because this was a real crossroad for Dexter, saying, I'm taking my heart and I'm no longer leaving it in this area or in this situation. I'm completely leaving this lifestyle behind and moving on to something completely better that I feel like is best for me and best for my development and my future. Everything that's bad, I ain't gonna leave it all behind. And that is what Valerie Cruz's character represents, moving on. So that's why she came back in this scene. So in Dexter wanting to actually move on, he runs into Saxon. Saxon is in there, and Saxon facing off with Dexter in Dexter's apartment symbolized that Dexter was basically facing the devil now, and he was saying, "This apartment right here, I want this place. I want this apartment, and this is where I'm gonna be. Now you can go your own way, or you can come pursue me." And that's what he was saying. That was actually an invitation, saying that was an invitation for Dexter. That basically the devil was saying, you know, you can choose to pursue me or come after me, But then at that point, you're playing the devil's game. So any move that you make is basically in his favor. It's basically in the devil's favor. But then he also gave Dexter the chance to leave. Now Dexter, and then he threatens Dexter's family and kind of lures Dexter in, tempting him. And then that's when he kind of goes into Dexter's greed, which messed him up in season 4, which again repeats the cycle. And Dexter was all like, this was Dexter's last trial. This trial represented the repeating cycle of how Dexter lost Rita, which was basically being greedy and saying, I want to kill this person myself and make sure they are dead, instead of letting other forces handle it. So the devil, Saxon, tempted Dexter in this moment. And Dexter was like, you know what? I wanted to leave, but then he just reminded me of why I need to stay. And it was like, no, Dexter, he just tricked you. You don't need to stay. The cops are already on him. They got what they need. You got what you need. Just get out. Let the cops handle this and just be done with it. Dexter, just leave. But then didn't happen, and Dexter said, I'm gonna pursue Saxon, and Dexter did, and he restarted the cycle that he did with Trinity. He didn't learn, and that's when we go back into the idea of psychological of cycles, repetitive cycles, which was whenever a cycle in someone's life needs to be broken, the situations will actually repeat themselves, but then a different choice has to be made in order for that cycle to break. So this was a cycle repeating itself, and Dexter fell into his greed of wanting to kill Saxon himself instead of letting him go. Um, so Dexter tried to pursue him, and then he did, and him and his humanity got him, and Dexter was like, cool, me and my partner, my Dexter's humanity and Dexter's dark side tried to fight the devil himself, and then they captured him. Dexter was about to kill Saxon, and by doing that, Dexter could have killed off the devil inside of him. But now that Dexter had him, Dexter was like, you know what? I don't need to kill you, and I don't want to. I want to let all this go. At that point, Dexter was already halfway in the game when he decided to let him go. So then Dexter was like, okay, now I'm going to go ahead and move on. So then Dexter moves on after he halfway played the devil's game with Saxon. And then that's when he talked to Harry, and Harry was like, oh yeah, you moved on. You're no longer a monster stuck in your own head anymore. Now you're living life. Now you are able to live. And then Harry's soul was able to ascend and move on. By doing what he did, Dexter actually, Saxon doesn't just represent the devil, but Saxon also represents the psychopath within Dexter. And I know it's kind of weird to kind of to say that for certain reasons that I may get into later, but um, uh, when Dexter had Saxon and then he let him go, he let his humanity deal with the devil basically, and Dexter let that innocent, vulnerable side of him, his own humanity, face off the dark, with that beast, with that type of a monster. And by doing so, the monster destroyed his humanity, damaged it. So when that happened, Dexter let this monster go. He didn't kill. He chose not to kill it, but he already engaged in its game. So he was already halfway in there. So then we get to the last episode. And when Dexter does kill Saxon, he does kill him, not in the traditional way, but Dexter does kill the inner devil and everything, and the psychopath. But but even though that happened, Dexter's humanity was damaged, which is Deb, and so now Dexter had to make the choice for Deb, which was let her go and let her suffer, or to kill her off. So then Dexter decided he can't let her suffer for what happened, and Dexter can't let his human side suffer from what happened. So Dexter gets Deb and gets her on the boat and takes her out, and it kills his own humanity, which is strange. Actually, it's strange how he did that. It was a mercy, but he had to try and kill his own humanity, and then he went off and said, he kills everything that he loves. He hurts everybody who's around him. So he gets on his boat and drives off into the hurricane. The hurricane was basically like the nexus point. It was like it was like the cycle, the spinning cycle, and it kind of represented death, but also represented like birth in a weird way. Um, the hurricane that actually hit was Hurricane Laura, which was actually named after Dexter's mom, which again symbolized birth for Dexter. So after Dexter kills off the inner psychopath in him, after Dexter kills the inner devil in him, and then Dexter kills the humanity of him, then he gets in the boat and he's left with nothing. So he drives off into the hurricane, and what happens. So now when we do the time skip or the jump or whatever, now Dexter's, a lumberjack or whatever. Dexter's, in his cabin and he's chilling. Dexter was left with nothing. Dexter was left with no thoughts. He was left with just him. There's no monologue, there's no nothing. It was just him, just Dexter. This was the fact that the characters that did die in the show, between losing his psychotic side, which means now Dexter doesn't his that side of him that was about killing is that psychotic side is not there anymore. That it's not there. What also isn't there is Dexter's humanity. So now that's not there. That got killed off inside of him. The code that he had, that he followed, that he lived by, Harry, is no longer there. That darkness isn't there. The therapy to work through his problems, vocal, is not there. Passing on the legacy to his son is not there. But out in the distance, there's still two major characters that were still alive. Well, three major characters that were still alive. These three major characters were Batista, Hannah, and Harrison. These three characters being alive actually meant that Dexter still had himself, him. He also had his light. His light was still alive somewhere inside of him. His sense of righteousness was still somewhere inside of him, which was represented by Batista's character. And his ability to love was still alive inside of him. Also, his humor was still alive, which was in the form of Masuka. Possibly also his romance, but just, you know. Um, So he still had those few pieces that were still left alive in him. Um, and Quinn. But, so, now Dexter was left with just a few more pieces of himself. So now, when we jump into um, season 9 or New Blood of Dexter, what this actually is this is in sense this is a type of ninth cycle of hell, a ninth circle of hell. Maybe I'll get more. Maybe I will do a video about Dexter New Blood. I didn't plan to, but I might. I have no notes for New Blood at all because I wasn't going to do it, but maybe I'll get into it. But the whole idea of Dexter New Blood, if I don't do it, I'll say it now, was Dexter actually was actually facing a part of him that was actually dead. Dexter is now facing a type of like purgatory within himself. Um, I don't know if I should do New Blood or not. But you see this because all of the characters in New Blood are actually recreations of the original character, of the original show. But Dexter New Blood is basically Dexter's transitioning from Dexter and then Dexter New Blood being more of a purgatory of being in between life and death and one paying for their sins or whatever. And then Dexter original sin was um, Dexter being reminded, through death that, hey, you remember this, remember your remember. And then Dexter Resurrection was Dexter coming back after being reminded of where he came from, of, how he got started on this path and remembering that he is a good person, remembering why he did what he did. Um, Reminding that some people did deserve, that in his mind, people deserve to die, but also that some people deserve to live. And that was important that he needs to understand, is that some people deserve to live. And so we get into Dexter Resurrection, which is Dexter coming back from death and given that understanding. I guess I can do a review for Dexter New Blood. It won't come, it may come soon. It's not going to come anytime soon. This is my recording for Dexter Season 8, which was basically about psychology and dealing with mental stuff. It was a great show. I love the show. Did not like Season 8. It was weird. Season 8 felt very weird. Even the scenes were weird. But I hope you enjoyed this. And I can't drag on my goodbye because I can't talk the way I want to talk anymore. You guys have a great night, and thank you for listening. And yeah, have a great night.